All right, awesome. Yeah, everyone was just waiting. Everyone was waiting at the door. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Today is our very first webinar in our Do Your Part campaign. This is our mission at Mobilization Funding, and hopefully yours too, since you're joining us today, to reframe the way people view, think, and talk about construction, both inside the industry and out. If you have not yet joined our mission and taken the Do Your Part pledge, you can find it on our website. And Scott posts about it on LinkedIn quite a bit as well. So I hope that you join us. Today, I am delighted to bring you the CEO of Mobilization Funding, Scott Pieper, with our special guests, Matt Vetter, who is the Vice President of Schafer Construction, and Mike Kepsel, who is the General Manager of Campbell and Shaw Steel. They're going to share with you how their two companies have built a solid GC subcontractor relationship based on common values, clear communication, and shared successes. Scott will be leading the conversation. We want this to be collaborative, so please put your questions in the Q&A box and I will let the guys know when you have a question. And with no further ado, take it away, guys.
Autumn, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you for joining. Matt and Mike, I really appreciate you guys joining. I'm super excited about this topic. Matt, you and I have talked about this endlessly on previous webinars, on different other conversations personally and private, and I just am so excited that as soon as we thought about this topic, we launched the Do Your Part campaign mission of ours. We wanted to have live relationships on that could actually talk about how they do this the right way, and I knew reaching out to you, you'd have a great person and you'd have a great trade partner. And Mike, I'm so glad you agreed to join us, so welcome and thank you very much.
No problem. You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, as Autumn talked about, the Do Your Part mission for us is really about just removing these stigmas that are around the GC sub relationship. Ironically, I actually had a meeting at the local ABC chapter here in Tampa this morning where these exact topics came up. Everybody in the room wants to have a different conversation, but yet everyone is sort of scared to start it off. And so we're in a unique place to be in the middle of both. We're not a general contractor. We're not necessarily in construction. We're certainly not subcontractor, trade partners, material suppliers, or anything in between, but yet we work with everyone. And so we have a unique perspective, I think, that I want to share with everybody. And doing that with my folks that I talk to routinely and even new, I thought this would be a great forum. So I, again, appreciate you guys for doing it. And if you want, I think it'd be great if everybody could just kind of give maybe a little 1 minute overview of who you are, your business, where you're located, and then I got a list of questions I'm excited to ask you guys.
You want to go first, Matt?
Sure. I'll jump in. So I'm Matt Vetter. I'm actually now the president of Schafer Construction. We're a commercial general contracting firm. We're based in Brighton, Michigan, which is Southeast Michigan. We've been in business. This is our 25th year. And we build everything short single family homes.
I'm Mike Kepsel. I'm the general manager at Campbell Shaw Steel. Business has been there probably 30 years. We do commercial and industrial steel frames for buildings.
Awesome. Two key things. That's what we need for sure. So how did you guys get into construction? Both, then your businesses are decades old. How did you get into construction?
I think I was going to school to be an architect, and somehow or another I was in a drafting class and was approached by one of the teachers, instructors, that a local steel company needed help as a draftsman or something. And I went and replied and got the job, and they offered me an apprenticeship, and I basically ended up quitting school and became a structural steel detailer through them, and then it just progressed.
Like,
I think you make a better.
You haven't tried to go back and design buildings where you bend steel into a perfect arc, have you? Or do you try to keep them pretty straight?
No, we've done it all.
Yeah.
Curves don't bother us. We have places we can roll stuff.
Nice. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I think you make a better steel guy than an architect, Mike. So I'm glad you went that route. I got my start in my late high school years because, quite honestly, I could make a lot more money moving lumber around job sites than I could doing most anything else at that age. And so that's really where it springboarded. I built houses for a long time, moved into commercial in early 2000, around that time frame, and it's just been kind of snowballing ever since.
So one of the things that we've always seen is this natural tension that's created sometimes, or seems like a lot of times, and between a trade partner in any trade and also the general contractor. And some think that it's maybe because of the nature of your opposing views on the control, on the actual contract itself, that you have the projects, you have others. Can you guys each give a little bit of background or just a perspective on the way you viewed it, maybe all along your career, or if that's changed at all?
I'll jump first, Mike. You know, when I first started in commercial, especially, we did a lot of planned spec work, and it was all, you know, low bid shit that frankly nobody really wins in. You know, whoever ends up with the job was typically the guy that made the most mistakes on his estimate. And I think, you know, that mentality of the low bid construction is kind of what puts us at odds with each other, right? Because nobody wants to admit, nobody wants to lose money first and foremost, but then to do that, nobody wants to admit fault. And so I think it creates this unnatural tension between the GC and the trade partner. You know, it gets pretty heated in that end. You know, we've tried to avoid that now, but I can see it very vividly in my memory of times when that happened, when it just leads to screaming matches, and it wasn't any fun for me, which is why I got out of it.
Mike, what do you think?
I kind of have to agree. You know, and I balance that with the estimators at the office, and they'll come to me with the projects. And I guess the first thing we ask, you know, who's the contractor? How's he going to do it? And you're like, yeah, that guy's going to do the low bid. Why waste your time? I've kind of changed the direction the company's going to more partnerships and not always have to chase the low bid, build relationships with the contractors. Because when you're fighting with them, or if you know you end up in a battle with them, it's no fun. And it's at the point where at my age, and as long as I've been doing this, sometimes I'm like, it's not worth the effort anymore. There has to be easier ways of doing it. Trying to reach out and build relationships, going in, trying to help with design or ideas. Always seems to work out better, and chasing the low bids all the time just never seems to work.
I think one of the key things you both just mentioned, that, and it was exactly where my brain was going when we first got into this business, was anytime we saw a low margin or low bid, right, everybody lost. And candidly, anytime we financed or worked with someone in a low bid situation, we end up losing too. And we went through the same evolution as you both described, but yet we were not a trade partner or a general contractor. We weren't even on the project side. You couple that with the natural just challenges of a construction project, specifically cash flow and how it flows from the bank to the owner and so forth all the way down. You're right. Focusing on something that's low bid is going to create problems for everyone. So the folks that are listening on this, I think that's the key takeaway. We talk about all the time, performance rules the world, and that's the most important thing. It's not price. And if you're thinking price when you're estimating, just know, you hear it, you've heard it here now, price leads to problems, and just change your focus on that. Which brings me to, what's the first construction projects you both worked on, and how did you realize you both had the same synergies and thought processes?
The first project we worked on together?
Yeah.
Holy cow. So I met Mike, got to be 10 plus years ago now.
Yeah.
I was running the pre-construction department at another company, another GC. And actually at the time, Mike was at another steel supplier. And to be honest, at that time, I knew Mike because he was the grumpy ass steel guy that you could call with questions. And I was the stressed out, you know, kind of asshole estimator who had no patience and wanted everything now. And, you know, we we worked together on a lot of projects when we were both of those separate companies. I don't remember when you moved to Campbell Shaw, Mike, but I think it was a bit before I left where I was at. I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the real synergy between us kind of happened after we both changed and took over different roles in new companies.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah. I can always remember the conversation we had with the architect and the engineer on the motorcycle shop on the big fancy canopy. And the architect was looking at it saying, well, the owner needs to get his arms around the project and whatever it was. And he said, the only thing the owner gets his arms around is his checkbook, and he's not going to let go of that.
I remember that conversation.
So how did you guys manage through it?
We basically told the architect and engineer, this is what we're going to do to make it work. And you just have to go along with it because we know where the owner is, and all we have to do is pick the phone call up, and this is what he's going to pay for.
Yeah, they were trying to strong arm us into, going back to the owner and basically saying, you're a wealthy guy, you should start spending more money. And I can't say who the owner is, but Mike knows him and I know him pretty well. And that wouldn't have gone well. We would have ended up probably in a ditch somewhere, to be quite honest with you. So
yeah,
it was probably that day that I really started pushing back on the design consultants, because it's real easy as somebody with no skin in the game to just say, I'll just put this in there and pay more money, right? When you have nothing to lose because you're going to get your damn fee, hell or high water, whether the project goes, whether it falls apart or otherwise. And I'm not knocking on the design guys completely. But I think it's just a different mentality that, kind of the blue collar side of the industry brings to the table. We got to be more realistic, right? We're fiduciaries of our clients' dollars and of their needs. And that's what kind of spawned this whole, real design build that we do now, where we try to take the onus of that responsibility onto ourselves so that we can provide the best for our owners. Mike and I still get along real well at the end of the project. Everybody makes money and we all win versus yelling and screaming and pointing fingers.
Interesting. Before you guys had these individual experiences, did you ever have any preconceived notions about, like Mike, in your case, other general contractors that either were from previous experiences that cemented for you that a negative feeling or a positive feeling, and then your interactions with Matt changed some of that, or maybe others? Can you talk a little bit about that?
There was always, as coming up in the steel business, as being in engineering and a detailer. And then I got involved with a larger contractor, design build. And Matt used to work there, but this goes way back before Matt's time. We were brought in way ahead of the design part with one of the partners and had to sit down. We would have lunches and basically the napkin sketch. We put it together, figure out what it was. He had numbers he wanted to get to his budget, and we'd work to help him get to that. And then they would bring in the design team and said, this is where we're going to go with it. This is what our base sizes were, heights, et cetera, all that stuff. And they designed to it. But then you go back to the plan and spec and quoting, that's a whole different animal. That's already designed and stuff. And then the contractors trying to work for the owner, I don't know whether that or the owner trying to push the contractor, or beating them up just to keep getting a better product for less money. It goes back to chasing the low bid. And a long time ago, I decided, I don't even want to do that. I just want to work with this and do the design build stuff up front and be able to get in, the front door and a relationship with a contractor. And then Matt came on, I don't know, a few years later, probably about 10 years ago or so. And I think he caught on to the whole thing, or he was working towards the same thing. It just grew from there.
Matt, on your side, you're working with a guy like Mike who's got the experience. He's gone through the evolution of low bid, margin, clearly can understand both sides of it. How do you shift when you're working on projects that, whether maybe Mike's not working on them, or, better yet, it's just a whole different trade, and that business owner or person you're working with has a different philosophy than Mike? How do those interactions go, and how do you try to coach them up or let them understand or feel comfortable that, you can have a different thought process with you as a trade partner than maybe what the stereotype is?
It's not easy. That's the simple answer. Is it's not easy to convince some guys of that we as a general contractor are not out just to hose everybody else, because that's the mentality that was driven by the low bid process, by the architects, frankly, that pumped on that drum. So, when we come across new subcontractors that are either looking at projects we're working on, or we're trying to build a new relationship, it takes a lot of work to foster that trust, for me to foster that trust from them that, okay, we're not going to string you out to dry. And I can talk all I want. I can paint a real good picture of my vision and how this industry should work and where we're trying to take it. But, at the end of the day, you're dealing with folks who have quite likely been burned pretty bad in the past by this system that we were all kind of forced to work in. So it takes time. And, Mike touched on relationships. That's it. Like you have to build that relationship before it ever works. And, to answer your question directly, Scott, there is no quick answer. I don't think, if they believe me right off the bat and I sold them on my, my outlook, then great. But I think more often than not, it just takes a lot of time, a lot of conversations before we get to that point where there is a mutual trust.
Mike, anything you would add to that?
No, I mean, I agree with them. It's all about the trust and the conversation. Before I was at Campbell Shaw, I was with the previous place, and that steel company, they chased the low numbers. And they would lowball it because their attitude was, we're going to make it up in extras and back charges. And then you're chasing a whole different animal, down that rabbit hole, and it doesn't work. And you get into all these conflicts with the contractors, and it was just a mess. It was a nightmare.
And conflicts cost money too.
Yeah, it was a lot of time to chase that. And, in the end, they would settle for 50% of it, but you still, everybody's like, you walk into a building or to a meeting and they know, okay, that's the lowball guy. I didn't want to be known of that. It didn't take long at all for me to get tired of it.
Yeah. So, both of you have probably developed younger guys on your own teams or new to the business. How do you coach and teach and train inside your own organization to help shape the mentality to approach your new customers or customers you want to work with the mentality that they may have been preconditioned with before?
That's what we're working on now. I'm trying to bring people in, and that's part of the problem with this business is the lack of people to come in. It's Matt and I've talked, trying to chase guys and get them into the business or bring kids in. They're just not walking in the front door, throwing an application at you and looking for a job right now.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I've got two guys that I'm working with to help them, and they were estimators, I guess, where they came from, and they were used to a certain thing, plan and spec. They didn't do a lot of design build. I came along when the owner was there and started, now I'm teaching him. It's a different way of doing things, working with different people, and kind of turning that corner away from those contractors that just throw things out to bid because we know it's a waste of time. I'm getting them to help, and I'm introducing them to contractors, and I'm gonna send them to Matt's golf outings so you get to know those people, and it's just changing the aspect of trying to do business.
Yeah, and we've done it on the GC side. I've tried to shape and mold numerous estimators in my career, and you can tell a very distinct difference when you get a guy that comes from one of the the big 5 construction firms versus somebody who comes from something maybe smaller or who's never done it before. And to be quite honest with you, I would rather the latter. I'd rather the guy who has no experience in construction whatsoever, but has an open mind and is willing to learn, than try and take the guy from, I'm not going to use their name, but the giant paper pushers, and bring him into my world and try and deprogram that mentality, because I've found it's nearly impossible. Maybe I just suck at doing it, but I've gone through more candidates and more new hires from that world trying to bring them into mine than I care to even admit. It's really difficult.
Hard to deprogram and reprogram. It takes a special person to have it that has a desire to want to realize, hey, I've learned a bunch of things that probably don't suit me well. And by the way, I want to accept the fact I'm going to blank them out and relearn. It is a special kind of person, regardless of your training skills, Matt.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So let's talk a little bit. I mean, we probably have we have a lot of subcontractors, general contractors, material suppliers, different administrators of different companies that are here on this webinar listening. For folks there, like, what are some proactive, specific things that they can both do to help change the culture around the GC subcontractor relationship on their projects? What would you recommend first and foremost that they could do? They don't have the trust yet. They got to jump out into a project. They have a culture around them that's either the way we've been talking about, that's the norm, or it's some combination of both. And how could they go do their part to help make it different?
Talk. Have discussions. Yeah. Have a discussion. The sad part, I think, right now is we don't have enough face-to-face discussions, don't have enough meetings. Granted, you had this whole virus thing that screwed that up. And technology today has made it easier not to have face-to-face meetings and discuss things and get views. I think we need to go back to that. Of course, then I'm old school, so I guess that's the old guy here talking.
Well, I'm not that much younger, but I agree with you. I mean, this sort of stuff is great because, right, we're having a conversation from different sides of the country, and it's got its purpose. But you know what Mike and I do on a day in, day out basis for our actual jobs, you learn much more, you communicate better when you can sit across a table from somebody. You can have an old-fashioned set of paper drawings and you know, highlighters, and you can scribble on them. I think talking is a huge point, but I think just shutting up and listening more would serve a lot of people, because I'm going to keep going back to the relationship side of it. You have to get to know Mike, right? You have to get to know where he's coming from and what his mentality is, and to understand how he's approaching a project. And until you can do that, you're just going to be spinning wheels. So I think overall communication is really the key. And as a society, we've gotten away from that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking I've had friends now as I get older, and I'm in my later 40s, but as I've gotten older and I've done different deals or negotiated different stuff, whether it's either inside mobilization funding or out, you get more confident with yourself. And as soon as it's like, almost like one day, and you can think about it along your journey, people will tell you, hey, you're okay. You know, you're pretty good. Like, you take those compliments. Sometimes you don't accept them. And other times you start to get, sometimes on the one hand, sometimes you believe them all and you think you're better than you are. But ultimately, as you build some confidence, that confidence also says, hey, look, I did a good job, but here's all the other reasons why I did. And in this case, it's you focused on performance. You didn't do low bid. Well, have the confidence to know why you are good. Be specific. Say, hey, you know what? I don't bid low bid jobs. Just be who you are, and that people are going to either like it or not. And just be clear about who you are, what type of projects you want to work on. If Matt's telling people, hey, look, we bid this one tight, this is going to be tough, you just tell them, hey, man, I'm not your guy then. I can't do that kind of work. I can't afford to carry the cost. But you know what? When you have this type of job and this one, I'm your guy and I can do great on that for you. And here's the reasons why. Like, then Matt doesn't waste time. You're not wasting time, and vice versa. And Mike, you don't have to burn up your resources. I've just found over the years that if I get more clear with what I can do well and what, more importantly, what I can't, it allows the other person to hone me in where they can see me fit well. And I think it applies to construction really, really well in the same manner, because every project's different. You know, they're, all the trades are different. Everything can be specific. I think if everyone just talked, like you said, Mike, I mean, that's the best advice, just talk. And when someone else is talking, Matt, you at the other side, listen and do it without judgment. And everyone can get a little more confident to be vocal. And if you're inside an organization and you're not the boss or you're not the head of something, ask questions, challenge why people are doing it. And, you know, why do we do it that way? Hey, well, that's the way we've always done it. If you hear that answer, then you're on the home run spot, man. Keep peppering that thing until someone gives you a better reason than because we always did it that way. Because to Mike's point, there's a lot of technology out there now, and there's better ways to do things. None of it's better than sitting face to face, in my opinion, but there's technology that definitely helps a construction project. There's technology that definitely helps bids and designs and workflows and all kinds of stuff. So those would be some pieces of advice that I would offer up. Just listen to your guys' conversation. I think you guys hit them well, nailed them.
Yeah, you know, look, this industry is stressful as hell. So the way I've started looking at it in the last, you know, half a decade or so is, if I'm going to stay in this industry and I'm going to sweat and toil to make a living doing what I do love to do, I want to at least have some damn fun, right? And
Yeah.
if every day is stressful and miserable because you're not, you know, you're always at odds with somebody, then what the hell's the point? Because nobody's getting mega rich doing what we do. We can do pretty well, and we've got other opportunities, but you know, you're not hitting billionaire status by being a smaller scale general contractor in southeastern Michigan. Sorry if that's a newsflash to you. You know, you can do well, you can have fun though, you can make a good living, but you got to be able to do it on your own terms.
Yeah. Mike, anything you'd offer up on that?
No, I gotta agree with them. You know, this business is stressful. It's hard, and it can be long days sometimes, and you got to figure out how to enjoy it. I guess I've come to the conclusion here lately. You know, we build buildings. Put a product out there. But I also remind myself, and I've started to remind everybody else, one thing we do is we just build buildings. We're not all surgeons. We make a mistake, you know, own up to it. Nobody's going to die on the operating table if we make a mistake or something gets broke or something falls down. We can get back up tomorrow and fix it and keep going. And that's just kind of the attitude we have to take and keep, you know, plugging along.
Yeah. So here's an opportunity for you guys. Let's just say this entire webinar was being heard by all the major owners and bankers and architects and designers in the world. What are the one or two things that you guys wish they were doing differently at the top of the waterfall that would help impact everyone positively?
You know, I think it comes back to communication, but learning too. You know, we have a constant struggle, seemingly lately, especially with lending institutions that do not understand the design build model of construction. They only understand, and they only have on paper, you know, the rules that govern the old school design bid, right? And trying for us, and that's been one of our biggest pain points in the last few years, is as we're growing as a company and working on larger and larger projects, we're by the nature of the beast dealing with more and more banks and lenders firsthand, and trying to educate them that, look, this isn't the way that you think it's done. This isn't the way you've been told it's always been done. We do things differently. There's a different approach here. For example, architects. In our model, I hold the architecture contract, where in previous models or other models, the owner does or the developer does. We have a constant battle with lending institutions to even get them to understand that. I'm in a battle right now. I have a call with my attorney after this to discuss this very topic, because we have a bank wanting me to get my architect sign over rights and to agree to a bunch of nonsense should the project go south, so that he would essentially then be working for the bank. To which I said that it's not even possible, right? We hold their contract. So maybe we could have that relationship with the lender, but it can't be the other way around. And it's just I'm not knocking on them, but it's an old school mentality that they don't seem to want to figure out or want to learn how it is that we do business. That was a long-winded answer around it, but we're seeing it constantly, it seems, and I don't know how the best to fix it, because just talking hasn't helped.
I think, developing relationships in the banking world are just as important. I know I've a lot of friends that are developers or partners, and they, who they're bankers and how they develop those relationships and educate them along on what they do and how they do it is important. And you think if banks can land into the world where they'll allow a developer to clear a piece of land, and they'll understand that there's going to be ultimately a building on it, and they have a lease with a tenant that for something that's going to be built, they're going to turn it over. They can understand the construction side too. They'll get the design build. Some of them do, but you're right. It's not every bank. It's certainly not the big ones either. I can promise you that. Big banks are not going to be the ones that are going to take time to figure that out.
No.
Is there one or two things that you guys have found that are in that AIA contract that you wish were changed, or you do change often to benefit one another?
I mean, I do by not using them. We've moved away from them completely. We still have some legacy projects that were under AIA documents. But there's other options out there, and again, I sound like I'm shitting all over the architecture profession. I'm really not, but an AIA document was written by architects and is designed to protect the architect and the owner. And it does nothing for the general contractor. It certainly does nothing for the subcontractors, and it causes divisions in and of itself. So there's other options. We've used consensus docs. Has a pretty reasonable set of documents that protects everybody, but it was written with input from subs and from GCs, not just the design side. There's other forms and formats. That would be my answer. Just stop using them.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's why I brought that up. Mike, what do you see working with different folks?
I'll have to agree with him. I mean, I've done some work from what Matt calls the big five in the area, and I've gone through their contracts that use those, and I've redlined them and marked them out and said, I'm not going to do this, or I don't agree with it, or, and I'll send it back to them, not sign, and so you need to change, revise it. And I've literally had their legal call me and say, you can't mark it up. I said, well, then I'm not signing the contract. You're going to have to go to the next guy. Next thing you know, they'll redline it and blank it out, and I'll get the contract. But it's always a nightmare. And if you don't take the time, spend a whole day reading the contract and going through it, you're leaving yourself exposed.
Yeah.
So like Matt says, there's better ways.
Matt, is this contract something that you guys have created or modified, or is it something that everyone can go get on their own to at least start with from a template perspective?
Nope, consensus docs. I think it's consensusdocs.com or something around that. It's not free. I mean, you got to pay for it, but anybody can go and buy their templates, which is what we've done, and then we modify them accordingly. Based on project, based on need. You could start from scratch. My attorney is always asking me to let her create us a contract, and while I appreciate the intent, I think more of it is to get the billable hours in doing so. But again, the consensus docs, it's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means. I don't think there is any perfect contract, but in my mind, from what I've seen, it's way more well-rounded.
Yeah. I can say that from our perspective, having reading a lot of contracts that are executed that come to us, the AI is definitely, and most of our customers are subcontractors, and it's definitely not a favorable contract without some tweaks to it. And you hit the nail on the head, Mike. Matter of fact, one of the webinars we did was with an attorney, happened to be out of Texas, but very familiar with the documents. And he recommended the 5 or 6 places that you really should like make some modifications if you want to have like if anything bad happens, you'll at least be in a somewhat okay spot versus just a disaster. And so I recommend everyone go do that. We can post that later on and show, but you got this, the money you spend on those contracts, redlining them is worth every penny. The couple hours you spend your attorney to, than it is getting in a fight, for sure.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So many people don't read them, you know, and
Yeah.
that on the GC side, the sub side, the owner side, so many people just, you know, if we could all work on a handshake, that'd be great. I'd love it, but that's not the world we live in. And if you don't take the time and spend the money to really understand what the hell it is you're signing, good luck to you.
Yeah, you need to read them.
Yeah. I'm going to look and see here if we have some questions. It looks like there's been some comments. I'm going to ask you guys a couple right from the audience here.
We do have questions. We have one from Ben that says, what have you done to educate the project owners who are hesitant to do the design build approach? It seems they're hesitant because they don't personally know or trust a GC or subcontractor, so they feel like they'll get taken advantage of. Whichever one of you wants to jump in first.
I guess I probably got the longer exposure. We used to sit down, going back to that one contractor, and he would bring a lot of his trades in and meet with the owner face to face. And we would put numbers together and he was showing those numbers. It was basic open book. We had a profit margin, but I could do it with Matt, anybody. I'd sit down and show you our cost for all of our materials, show you our labor hours and our profit margin at the end. You know, if a contractor is willing to do that with an owner, I don't see how it couldn't work. Maybe they're not showing that, so maybe that's how the owners feel like maybe they get taken.
I think that's just it. You know, Ben, he mentioned that they don't know or they don't trust the person. That's the first 3 rules of sales, right? You gotta get your client to know, like, and trust you. And if you're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, why would they trust you? You know, we operate still, like Mike just said, on a very open book. I'm happy to sit down with an owner and any of my trade partners that are there, and we'll show them every number. I'll show you exactly what I'm going to make. Mike will show you what he's going to make. You may not like it, but you know, at least it opens up the door for conversation. And that's the way we change this industry, is we have to start having those conversations to gain the trust from the ownership community as a whole. Because it, you know, design build's been around forever, but for a very long time, it's just been a catchphrase. You know, it's been like hanging your core values on your wall and calling that good. People would throw it around to use it as a marketing term. We have to do better as an industry to really teach people what the hell it means and how it can actually work and benefit not just us, but the owners also.
Because the owners want their building built. I mean, they're not interested in the construction of the building. Doesn't help them. That's not the purpose of the building. It's not, certainly not going to make them any money. It's not going to occupy itself. So I think what you just hit the nail on the head, both of you, is the confidence to actually say, I'm making money on the project, by the way, guys. I'm definitely doing that, number one. And here's how much I'm making. And I don't feel bad about making that money. And there's a lot of risk. Like on paper right now, I make this money. If I could flick my fingers and it's done, yeah, that's what I'll make. But you know what? There's a lot of things in here that have risk. I have to perform. I have to manage people. There's a 10-month project. It's a 2-month project, whatever it is. A lot has to go right for me to make that money. More often than not, I'll make less. Sometimes I might end up making more if I can be efficient, but who cares? Like, you know, I'm making money. That's it. And that's the brain shift that I've seen in our group while we work with different folks, that and I'm sure there's folks on here now thinking like, that's insane, I've never done that before. I promise you, if you do that, you're going to win more bids because I believe it's the unknown that people don't trust, not what they know. If they know you show them all the numbers, they know you're going to make 25% and they think you should only make 15. They're happy that you're not making 30 because that was on the table before, or 40 or 50 or whatever. And they feel like, okay, 25 is more, but they know, at least they know. And they're like, all right, then they can talk to you about the things that are actually important. All right, if I give you this, you're going to do a good job, Mike. You promise you're going to do a good job. This is why, and here's how, and they can run with that. That's what I believe.
Well, why the F wouldn't we do that? Right. We have already talked about how stressful the industry is. It is fun. I like building stuff, but it's not that fun that I want to do it for free. I've got plenty of things I could occupy my time with if I wasn't making any money and I wasn't concerned with paying bills, and it probably wouldn't be building buildings. So we do it as a profession. We do it to make a living, to put food on our families' plates. You know, why the hell not have those conversations? And if the owner doesn't like that I'm putting 15% on it, we can have a debate, you know, but you get back to that age-old conversation. Well, what is my experience worth? Because you can't do this yourself. That's why you're talking to me. You know, just like I can't do surgery, but I can build a hospital, you know, and Mike's got, you know, decades of experience under his belt. Why the hell shouldn't he charge for that? Because nobody else has that. You can't reproduce that. You know, there's no technology ever that can reproduce that sort of thing. So we've all got to stop being so chicken shit about making money. That's why we're doing this. That's why we have these conversations. That's why we're in business.
I couldn't agree more. You know, the other point I was going to make was as you start to jump into these and you're having these conversations about dollars and cents and money, you realize all of a sudden, okay, yeah, 20% is whatever. That's the margin, let's say, for example, but they're holding 10% retainage and they're talking about 20%. And you're like, listen, man, I'm running the job on 10, which is hard. Like, how about I hold 50% of your profit? I mean, 10 seems like 10, but it's really 50% of the profit. I mean, then you might be able to get into a conversation where the owner might say, okay, well, if you could bring your margin down to, you know, 5%, then I won't hold any retainage. And then you have a choice. Then you can make some decisions. Well, that might be advantageous to you. Maybe you'd rather have more of your money up front. You can do it for less. Or maybe you can say, I'll hold, you know, you can pay my guys, or I can pay this, or I can get better terms if you allow me to do this, this, and this. Or yeah, I'll do that if you give me 10% up front on the contract, and I can actually get out and get started and do this more efficiently. Now you can get into meat of real conversations that actually will make the job more efficient. You could actually make more money on it by spending less. You could get into some conversations if you get past the price and what everybody's making, and just slap it on the table. That's my personal opinion. I've seen that in my own world with different business ventures. I've definitely heard folks like you guys who do this just like this, and every one of them are more happy. They do better projects, they avoid problems, and there's less ambiguity, always.
There's an added benefit to talking about money. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
Oh, go ahead.
In that the perception of construction is that and we talk about this in the Do Your Part campaign, that the perception of construction as an industry is that it's a dead end job and that you have to go to college and, you know, all the stories that we all know, right? But if the industry is willing to start talking about what you actually can make in construction, if we're just, like you said, less chicken shit and willing to talk about the money that can be made here, that's part of changing the perception, you know, for the younger people who are coming into the industry, that it's an actual viable career where you can make real money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have enough time to get me on that soapbox today. that could be a whole nother episode, but I agree with you.
And it will be.
100% agree with you, Autumn.
Yep, we'll have you on for that one, I promise.
I'll also say, if everyone hangs up on this and complains about the topics we're having and do nothing different, then I guess you deserve what you're getting. But now that you've been on this and listened, try it. Pick the person you have the best relationship with. Go show them how much you're going to make on their project. Ask them if there's anything you could do for them to help them better. think about it from their perspective, and ask them to think about the project from your perspective, and you'll both find a lot of value in that, and probably a great relationship. I promise you, the unknown, this is the one last thing I say, the unknown is what people don't trust more than anything else. The unknown.
Yep.
Very true. All right. And if you haven't yet, go to our website, take the Do Your Part pledge, join us in our mission. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We don't have any other questions, so I'll go ahead and give you 15 minutes back to your day. Scott, did you want to close us out?
Yeah, there was one in the chat.
Go ahead.
I think we answered it. It had to do with, let me see, I saw it here earlier. Will we be sharing this recording? Yes, absolutely. We'll send out a link to this to everyone. We'll also put it on LinkedIn. It'll be live. I'm sorry, not live. It'll be on YouTube. You can always go get it. You can see this as many times as you want in slow motion. Rewind it, fast forward it, you'll be able to see it all. I think Matt mentioned the consensus docs was another question in the chat about where the documents are. And everyone that's had so many positive comments, I thank you very much. We appreciate it. And most importantly, Matt and Mike, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate you guys having the courage to share this, your own relationship and journey and interaction. I applaud both of you for having the confidence to do the way you do it. And most importantly, this Do Your Part mission, you guys definitely represent and are already leading the way on it. And I'm so glad we chose you guys and asked you, and most importantly, you accepted to jump on. It's great to watch the both of you and what you've cultivated. And I'm certain one or a few people, if not hundreds, hopefully will be impacted by this and start to have a little bit different conversations. And soon enough, the world will keep spinning. And it'll permeate out farther and farther. And we'll all of a sudden, one day someone's going to come to you and show you, an owner's going to walk in your guys' door and show you how much money they're going to make and ask you how much you're going to make. And maybe they'll even give you a little more and tell you it's not enough.
That's
Scott,
good.
I appreciate you having us on. It was fun as always. Mike, I'm glad you came. Thanks thanks for helping along the way, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all. Please join us in the Do Your Part mission. There's some cool gifts. There's lots of stuff we're doing. It costs you absolutely nothing. We're going to help educate things just like this type of topics, more guests, more conversations, different blogs, different ideas. Our part in this Do Your Part mission is launching our cash flow tool that we will have. We've gone through webinars on this before, but it's a cash flow tool. It is 100% free. Anyone can download it right on our website. What is a cash flow tool? It basically helps you figure out if you have a bid and an estimate and a schedule you need to keep, it'll show you exactly how much cash you need to execute that job. And if you don't have enough cash, just imagine knowing that in advance, and then you have the options and tools to be able to go do it. Perhaps you take that tool into your GC or your owner and you show them, hey man, I need $5 million to run the project because you're taking too long to pay me. If you pay me in 30 days, I only need 2 million. So help me out, or hundreds of thousands, or whatever it is. But that tool is very impactful to help you make proactive decisions. It's 100% free, and all the tools are there for you to use it and show it and work off of it. So thank you all. Again, Mike and Matt, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Take care, everybody.
You too.